What's it like to call someone else wife in front of your actual wife? Well, let me tell you, it's a wild experience. I'm the kind of guy who's bad at drinking but loves the thrill of partying. One time, I woke up completely forgetting that I even had a wife. As usual, I rounded up my buddies and headed to a nightclub for a party. After a few too many drinks, I stumbled into the wrong VIP room and immediately threw myself onto a beautiful woman sitting near the door, shouting, "Honey, I'm home." The next second, a sharp slap landed on my face. A furious voice growled, "Sincere, you better take a good look at who your real wife is." Let me tell you, I've never been much of a drinker, but I can't resist the nightlife. The allure of neon lights, the haze of perfume, and the sweat from dancing, it's intoxicating. On my birthday, I decided to head to a bar again with my crew. As a lightweight, I'd already embarrassed myself last time by passing out after a single drink and causing chaos at the bar counter. My friends did their best to hold me back, but I still managed to open 18 bottles of liquor, barely taking 2 sips out of each with a chopstick. My buddy Charles said I was still slurring nonsense at the door, insisting I wasn't drunk. I even held on to the bar's broomstick like it was my lifeline. The worst part? I accidentally smashed Charles's Range Rover on my way out. Ever since, my friends have teased me for being all talk and no game. Determined to prove them wrong, I planned a grand night out for my birthday. The bar's atmosphere was as seductive as ever, with its dim lights and pulsating music. After 3 sips of whiskey, my stomach rebelled, and I ran to the restroom to throw up. After rinsing my mouth, I stumbled back to our VIP room, but my drunken state led me to the wrong door again. As soon as I pushed it open, I fell into the arms of a gorgeous woman sitting near the entrance. The room was warm, and the faint scent of her perfume made my head spin. I grinned foolishly and said, "Honey, I'm back." Before she could respond, a loud slap echoed through the room. A cold, sharp voice cut through the haze, "Sincere, you better figure out who your real wife is." Confused, I turned my head and saw a woman with delicate features and a face flushed red with anger. Her crescent-shaped brows furrowed as her sharp fox-like eyes locked onto mine. She was stunning, no doubt about it. Her lips, though scolding me, were irresistibly appealing. In my drunken boldness, I wrapped an arm around her waist, leaned in, and kissed her. Her lips tasted like sweet orange juice. A few seconds later, dizziness hit me again, and I almost fell to the floor. She caught my arm and said, "Here you go again." I chuckled, pulling her closer. "I've decided you're my new wife now." Her face turned an even deeper shade of red. How I left the bar that night, I couldn't tell you. All I know is that when I woke up, there was a woman lying next to me. Her stunning face looked oddly familiar, but I couldn't place her. Then it hit me. I glanced down at my own bare body, and then at hers. She wasn't wearing much either. I was speechless. Had I been picked up by some random woman? She stirred awake, her lashes fluttering as she opened her sleepy eyes. Like a cat, she curled into my chest and murmured, "Honey, it's still early." Her soft, sleepy voice sent shivers down my spine, but then I jolted upright. "Wait a second, who's your honey? Are you trying to scam me?" She blinked at me innocently. "Oh, stop talking so much. Just pay me $16,000 and we'll call it even." What the hell? This was daylight robbery. I jumped out of bed and declared, "I'm calling the cops." She let out a cold laugh. "Calling the cops? Go ahead." As I hurriedly threw on my clothes, I shot back, "You bet I will." She sat up lazily, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Well, if you're going to the station, let's save the trip. I can register your complaint right here." I froze. "What do you mean?" She reached over for her jacket, casually pulling out a badge. "See for yourself." I squinted at the ID card. My vision was blurry without glasses, so I moved closer. The name on the badge read, "Victoria, Chief Inspector." "You've got to be kidding me." "Are you serious?" I asked, still in disbelief. Victoria's fox-like eyes narrowed as she smirked. "Believe me now?" Her playful expression only made my blood boil. What kind of cop does this kind of thing? Charging $16,000 for what, a little role play? Just because you're a cop doesn't mean you can break the law. I'll make sure you face justice." She chuckled, her tone dripping with mockery. "Defamation is a crime too, you know." Indignant, I shot back, "Defamation? You spent the night at my place and are demanding money. The evidence is right here." I pointed at the bed, then grabbed my phone to take a picture. Victoria snatched it out of my hand effortlessly. "Go ahead and check for yourself." She pointed to the nightstand. Following her gaze, I saw 2 small red booklets. Curious, I picked one up and squinted at the text. My nearsightedness made it hard to read, but as I brought it closer, the last line on the page hit me like a ton of bricks. Marriage certificate. Marriage certificate. I flipped it open and saw a photo of me and Victoria inside. The registration date was a month ago. What the heck? I'm married? Did I time travel? I ran to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror for a while. I was still me, no changes. But how could I not remember getting married, and just last month? Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. Victoria, already dressed, walked in. "I have a case to handle later," she said. "By the way, you ordered 18 bottles at the bar last night. Don't forget to settle the bill." I was speechless. She reached out, grabbed the pink bunny toothbrush from the rack with practiced ease, squeezed a small dollop of toothpaste onto it, and started brushing. While brushing, she added with dissatisfaction, "Don't go out drinking again next time." I stood there, frozen. Victoria squinted at me and said sharply, "And stop calling random people wife." "Got it?" I quickly replied, got it. After she left, I was still in a daze. That's when my buddy Charles called. That's right, I could ask Charles. If I really got married, he would definitely know. I answered the phone and hesitantly asked, "Did you know I got married?" I expected him to say, "Yeah, you told me about it a month ago." And then I could ask him for more details. Instead, he replied, "You idiot. Are you trying to borrow money again?" I was dumbfounded. He continued, "If you need cash, just say so. When have I ever turned you down? You've been single for years, and now you're telling me you're married?" Charles's booming voice almost made me deaf. I cautiously asked, "I'm serious, I didn't get married, right?" On the other end of the line, there was a moment of silence. Then Charles, rarely serious, said, "Sincere, it's early in the morning, tell me the truth, did you down 18 bottles of booze again?" Frustrated, I said, "Meet me at that cafe near my office. We need to talk." This was getting bizarre. Even Charles didn't know about my marriage. Could I have been sleepwalking? I quickly freshened up, grabbed the marriage certificate from my bedside and drove to the cafe where I'd arranged to meet Charles. As soon as I entered, I spotted him sipping coffee. With a loud smack, I slapped the marriage certificate onto the table. This must have startled him because he spilled his mocha, leaving a brown stain on his pants. Just as he was about to yell at me, he froze when he saw the red booklet on the table. "Did you seriously make a fake certificate just to borrow money from me?" he asked quietly. Charles picked up the little red booklet. I nodded. "Fake certificate makes sense. How did I not think of that earlier?" I snatched the marriage certificate from his hands before he could open it. "Good buddy," I said. "You're a genius." Charles blinked and asked, "Are you insulting me?" "No, really," I said, laughing as I walked out. Before leaving, I turned back and added, "By the way, Charles, you'd better go change your pants. You look like you had an accident." I ran out as fast as I could, hearing Charles's irritated shouting behind me. "Sincere, you son of a..." I had it figured out. That woman must have forged the marriage certificate to fool me. Now that I think about it, her police badge must be fake too. I drove to the police station address listed on Victoria's ID. If I checked, I'd know for sure. "Victoria, you like pretending to be a cop? Well, get ready to experience the real deal." At the station's front desk, a friendly young female officer greeted me. "Hello, how can I help you?" I leaned in and quietly asked, "Is there someone named Victoria here?" She looked at me curiously, then softly replied, "You're looking for Officer Victoria? She just left on a call." My eyes widened. Are you sure? There's really someone named Victoria. She blinked at me and said, Of course. Everyone here knows Officer Victoria. She's our precinct star, beautiful, kind, and skilled. Back in the day, people would file fake reports just to see her. Some even reported missing socks just to get her attention. But I heard she recently got married. May I ask who you are? I was completely dumbfounded. Holding onto a sliver of hope, I pulled the marriage certificate from my bag and handed it to her. Can you check if this is real? I asked. She took the red booklet, opened it, and after a moment, looked at me with wide eyes. So, you're Officer Victoria's husband? Husband? I exclaimed. I barely even know her. Can you verify if this certificate is real, or look up my marital status? I asked urgently, handing her my ID. About a minute later, she returned both documents to me and said, Everything checks out. You're married and your spouse is Victoria. I was at a loss. No, really, check again. This can't be real. Isn't Victoria just someone who makes fake IDs? Just then, a bright and familiar voice came from the entrance. Who says I make fake IDs? I turned toward the voice. Sunlight poured in from the door, illuminating her figure. She was wearing a light blue uniform shirt, its tailored fit subtly highlighting her graceful curves amidst her commanding presence. My brain froze and I stood rooted to the spot. The young officer glanced between me and Victoria, her voice full of curiosity as she asked, Officer Victoria, what's going on here? Victoria walked up to me and stopped. Lifting her gaze, Victoria curled her lips into a faint smile and said, Oh, honey, what brings you here? She tiptoed closer and whispered near my ear, Make sure you speak carefully. Don't forget that spreading false rumors is punishable by detention. For a moment, I was at a loss for words. In my desperation, I blurted out, I lost my sock. I'm here to report it missing. Victoria was speechless. Vicky, the young policewoman, was also stunned. Then a female voice chimed in. The woman said, Victoria, isn't this the husband you arrested a month ago? Looks like he's here to check on you. You guys don't know, but back then your husband was pretty wild. And last time he even jumped on me. I was dumbfounded. Arrested husband? What kind of nonsense was this? Was I some fugitive on the run? And what was with all this talk about being wild and jumping on her? I glanced at Victoria in confusion. She met my gaze, then turned to glare at the policewoman who had spoken. Tiffany, are you really that bored? She snapped irritably. The policewoman, clearly flustered, quickly replied, No, just joking. I looked again at the woman who had been called Tiffany. She was the sweet-looking girl I had noticed sitting at the door last night. A pretty face, sure, but unfortunately, that mouth of hers could start a storm. An older officer nearby chuckled and added, Yeah, that's Tiffany for you, no filter. That's probably why she's still single. Scares off every guy she talks to. Another officer chimed in. But to be fair, Sincere is pretty tough. Remember that time he downed 18 bottles just to sniff the aroma, and then smashed a Range Rover outside the bar to stop his friend from drunk driving? Modern-day Robin Hood, I'd say. And Victoria, being our precinct star officer, well, it's like a match made in heaven, a hero and a beauty, meant to be together forever and have lots of kids. The group laughed and nodded in agreement, leaving me utterly speechless. This level of flattery was giving me second-hand embarrassment. Forever and kids? No thanks. I was still figuring out how to get her behind bars. Victoria crossed her arms, pursed her lips, and said, So, you're all pretty idle, huh? No sooner had the words left her mouth than the group of junior officers scattered like leaves in the wind. Even the receptionist lowered her head, trying to stifle her laughter. Victoria's gaze returned to me, scanning me like a suspect under interrogation. Her narrowed eyes made my skin crawl. All I could do was offer her a sheepish smile. So, she said, do you really want to file a report about your sock? I was at a loss for words. This woman wasn't just some random cop. She seemed to carry serious weight around here. And honestly, I was a bit worried she might actually lock me up for slander. Not wanting to push my luck, I quickly shook my head. Victoria told me to pick her up after work. In the car, as soon as I sat down, she leaned in close. Her face was just inches from mine, her eyes sparkling like stars against a dark sky. For a brief moment, even a fool could understand her intentions. My heart raced as I leaned in, ready to kiss her. But just as our lips were about to touch, she pulled back and grabbed the seatbelt beside me, fastening it tightly around me. "Did you think I wanted to kiss you?" She teased, her lips curving into a faint smile that revealed a small dimple. Grinding my teeth, I retorted, "Did you think I wanted to kiss you?" "Really?" she asked, her fox-like eyes glinting playfully. Swallowing hard, I felt a strange surge of competitiveness rise within me. I stared at her for 2 seconds before grabbing the back of her head and kissing her firmly. When I pulled away, I smirked and replied, "Of course not." She froze for a moment, her cheeks tinged with a hint of pink. After a pause, she huffed and said, "You've got guts, huh, kissing a cop like that? Aren't you afraid I'll arrest you?" I pulled out a small red booklet, smirking as I said, "We've got papers, remember? Kissing my wife is perfectly reasonable, legal even." After a brief pause, I added, "And lawful." Her expression suddenly turned serious as she asked, "Do you remember now?" "Remember what?" I asked, confused. She frowned slightly and replied, "Nothing." I was baffled. I brought Victoria back to our place. She told me I had amnesia. "I don't think so," I replied. "I just don't remember much about you. I remember everything else, like my buddy Charles." "Yeah," she said. "You just forgot me." "Is that even possible?" I asked. She rolled her eyes and replied, "How should I know?" Fine, if she didn't know, then so be it. But why was she getting annoyed? "So how did we end up married?" I asked. "You forced me," she said flatly. I was speechless. Forced? She didn't exactly look like a damsel in distress. Victoria ignored me after that. Oh well, it didn't matter. Honestly, it wasn't so bad to live with a stunning policewoman. Life is short, why not enjoy it? No use dwelling on things that don't matter. That night, I took a long, hot shower to wash away my exhaustion. But just as I stepped out, I felt a wave of dizziness. My body swayed, and a warm liquid began to trickle from my nose. Touching my face, I saw my hand come away covered in blood. Crap, this was bad. "Victoria," I shouted, "I think I'm done for. I need to write a will." Within moments, I heard her trembling voice from outside the bathroom door. "I'm here. What's going on? Can I come in?" Leaning against the wall, I opened the door for her. When she saw my bloodied face, she froze for a moment before frowning and asking, "What happened to you?" I decided to cut straight to the point. "Victoria, yesterday we might have overindulged. Hurry up and grab a pen and paper." "While I'm still clear-headed, I need to write a will," I said. Victoria looked at me speechlessly. Her previously tense expression relaxed as she listened to my words. A faint dimple appeared on her cheek as she smiled. "Seriously? Here I am all worried, and you're joking around like this?" she said, shaking her head. "Sincere, did you eat wild ginseng dipped in sugar again during the day? The doctor told you not to snack on that stuff, remember? You even ended up in the hospital because of it before. Have you forgotten we already talked about this?" I scratched my head awkwardly and admitted, "Did I? I mean, I only had 4 or 5 sticks today." Victoria let out a long sigh, clearly exasperated. After a moment, she added, "It's always the same with you. You forget things, but this one trick of yours remains. Don't you think it's getting old?" "Whatever, we'll talk when you remember." Still confused, I asked, "How do you know all this so well?" Victoria suddenly leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because I'm your lawful wife, not some random woman from a club you decided to take home." She deliberately emphasized those last words, her tone carrying a hint of personal grievance. Then, without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away. I splashed some water on my face to calm my racing thoughts and emerged from the bathroom. Just as I stepped out, I heard faint rustling sounds. Curious, I followed the noise to the bedroom door. Inside, Victoria seemed to be on a call, and from the volume she had probably put it on speakerphone. A man's unfamiliar voice came through the line. "Hey babe, have you been?" The word babe hit me like a truck. I felt my blood boil. My wife, someone else's babe, was she cheating on me? I crept closer to the door, trying to hear more clearly. Victoria's voice followed, casual and composed. "Not bad, just been a little busy." The man on the other end said, "If you're short on cash, just let me know. And come visit me when you have time." "Sure," Victoria replied. "I'll stop by during my next day off." My mind was spinning. My face burned red with anger, but my heart felt a cold sting of betrayal. I pulled out my phone, starting a recording to capture every detail. Just as I waited for more, the door suddenly opened. There I stood, shirtless, phone in hand, frozen in place with an awkward expression. Victoria raised an eyebrow, taking one glance at the recording interface on my phone. She chuckled softly. "You sure know how to cover yourself, huh?" I was dumbfounded. How could she remain so calm? She was caught red-handed. Was this the level of composure police officers had? A surge of anger welled up inside me, and I shouted, "Do you even realize what you're doing? This is infidelity, a betrayal of love and marriage. I'm just gathering evidence to protect my legal rights for future investigations." Victoria narrowed her eyes at me. "So you're trying to send me to jail?" I smirked. "Ah, now you're scared, aren't you?" Just then a voice came through the phone again. "Babe, who's that?" The call hadn't even ended. My fury exploded. The arrogance, the audacity. Did she think so little of me? I grabbed her phone and shouted into it, "I'm her husband. Who the hell are you?" The line went silent. I figured the person on the other end was probably stunned. Then I heard a chuckle before the call abruptly ended. Victoria waved her phone at me with a sly smile. That was my dad. I was speechless. Wait, her dad? What kind of father calls his grown daughter babe? Your dad's, quite affectionate, I muttered awkwardly, trying to salvage some dignity. Victoria's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Yeah, he spoils me." The air between us grew thick with silence. Neither of us spoke, just standing there like two statues. After what felt like forever, she stepped closer and said, "Honey, don't you think it's time we got some rest?" Her words instantly lifted my spirits. I grinned sheepishly. "Rest? Yes, rest is good. Rest is important." She turned away, adding with a playful glance over her shoulder, "I'm going to change first." With that, she gave me a flirtatious smile, letting one strap of her dress slide off her shoulder as she disappeared into the bedroom. Change. Right, of course. I cleaned myself up quickly, brushed my teeth, rinsed my mouth, the whole works, before heading into the bedroom as well. The night deepened. The room was cast in shadows, with only a sliver of moonlight slipping through the curtains. I climbed into bed, ready to make my move. But to my dismay, Victoria was already fast asleep, her eyes shut tight. I stared at her, dumbfounded, and eventually laid stiffly on the mattress beside her. Minutes passed. I couldn't sleep. My heart raced in a way I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the memory loss, but I couldn't recall ever sharing a bed with a woman before. The experience left me oddly nervous. Just as I was about to turn over and steal another glance at her, Victoria shifted in her sleep. She nestled closer, resting her head against my neck. Her warm breath tickled my skin, and for the first time in days I slept soundly. Recently, Victoria had forbidden me from hanging out with my drinking buddies. As someone who lived off rental income and didn't work, my days were often aimless, filled with idle thoughts. The gaps in my memory only made things worse, leaving me prone to suspicion and overthinking. Lately, Victoria had been going out at night with heavy makeup on, fueling my doubts even further. I remembered what Vicky, the front desk officer, had mentioned once, that as a policewoman, Victoria had plenty of admirers. It also brought back the memory of how I had first met her, at a bar. She probably forbade me from going out for drinks because she wanted to meet her lover in secret, betraying me behind my back. So today I decided to drop by the police station to investigate. While part of me was curious about her, I was more interested in understanding what had happened between Victoria and me. How did we meet? Why did Victoria arrest me? How did I lose my memory? And most importantly, how did I end up forcibly marrying her? To make my visit seem less suspicious, I decided to play the role of a thoughtful husband and bring a homemade meal for Victoria. As I stepped into the police station, the receptionist, a young officer I had met before, glanced up and noticed me. Her expression shifted slightly. From one of the interrogation rooms, the sound of a heated exchange reached the lobby. I approached the reception desk and asked, "Where's my wife?" Her gaze shifted toward the direction of the interrogation room. She hesitated before replying, "She's in there." Seeing her reluctance to speak, I immediately felt alarmed. Without waiting, I grabbed the meal box and headed straight for the interrogation room. But as soon as I opened the door, I froze in shock. A man had Victoria pinned against the wall, his arm blocking her escape. His eyes burned with intensity as he said to her, "You're stunning. I like you." What kind of cheesy line was that? Was this really what Victoria found appealing? She frowned slightly, gently pushed his arm away, and said, "Could you just be honest with me for once?" The moment she heard me enter, her gaze shifted toward me. Her frown softened as she walked over, linked her arm through mine, and pulled me aside. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I noticed the man glaring at me with hostility. I shot him a cold look before turning to Victoria with a dark expression and said, "If I didn't show up, you might have been taken away by someone else." Victoria was momentarily stunned, but then covered her mouth and laughed. "Do you think everyone is like you, forcing women into marriage?" she teased. I was speechless. Why was this forced marriage thing always coming up? Before I could respond, the receptionist walked over and said, "Sincere, don't get the wrong idea. This is just today's case." Victoria's questioning him. Honestly, Victoria is very principled and serious when it comes to relationships. Hearing this, I smiled and threw an arm around Victoria's shoulders. "Victoria, you've got a good reputation here," I remarked. She rolled her eyes at me, clearly unimpressed, and then shifted her gaze to the meal box I was holding in my left hand. "What did you bring?" she asked. "Oh." I raised the box and said, "I brought you lunch." But as I lifted it, I realized something was leaking. Panicking, I shoved the box into her hands and started rummaging for napkins to save my shirt. Amid the chaos, I heard a dissatisfied voice behind me. "Sincere, my lunch is just instant noodles?" Victoria asked, holding the box. Scratching my head awkwardly, I admitted, "Well, yeah, I've never cooked before, but there's also a sausage." The room fell silent for a moment before the receptionist couldn't hold back her laughter. "Vicky!" Victoria called out, biting her lip in mild annoyance. Wendy, the receptionist, immediately went quiet, awkwardly smiling as she said, "Victoria, I mean it, Victoria replied, "You want this kind of luck? It's yours if you want it." Wendy suppressed her laughter, and I had nothing to say. Seriously, where were their manners? The cook wasn't complaining, but the eater had so much to say. Just as I was about to take the meal box back, I heard the screech of a chair being pushed back. Then with a loud pfft, the man from earlier spat into the cup noodles. What the heck? I spent 10 minutes making that gourmet meal. Before I could react, he grabbed the noodles and dumped them onto me. The broth dripped down my shirt as rage surged through me. Grabbing his collar, I raised my fist, ready to punch him, but Victoria immediately grabbed my wrist, stopping me. I have to admit, her grip was quite strong. Soon a group of officers rushed over to separate us and restrain the man who had caused the mess. Victoria touched my arm gently and said in a soothing voice, "Honey, it's okay. Next time I'll enjoy the meal you so carefully prepare." Gradually I calmed down and sighed. This guy is unbelievable. Wendy pointed to her head and said, "Sincere, don't take it personally. That guy's not all there." Signaling to Victoria to let go of me, I stepped toward the restrained man. He glared at me coldly and sneered, "Victoria is my woman. You think you're worthy of marrying her?" Clearly something was off with him. I replied, "Worthy or not, I still married her." "What's that phrase again?" "Oh right, forcibly married her. What are you gonna do about it?" From behind me, Victoria said, "Ethan, your brother William has already been caught." I don't care if you're genuinely crazy or faking it. What happened a month ago will be settled with both of you in due time. Today, you're here for questioning. I've warned you before, stop trying to pull any smart tricks. This is your final warning. I turned to Victoria, utterly confused. I understood every word she said, but when put together, it made no sense. Victoria turned to Wendy and said, "Wendy, handle the rest. I'll be back later." After giving her instructions, she took my hand and led me out of the interrogation room. She brought me to a separate room and closed the door behind us. I pulled out a white shirt and a pair of pants from the closet and handed them to him. "Wash your face, clean yourself up, and put these on," Victoria said. I took the clothes and looked them over. They were men's clothing. Confused, I asked, "Wait, why do you have men's clothes in your closet? That doesn't seem right." Victoria sighed, gave me a playful punch on the chest and said, "What are you even thinking? Look closely, will you? These are all your clothes. Don't you remember that time you got drunk, threw up all over yourself, and had to change at the police station?" She paused before adding, "But hey, if you don't want to change, that's fine. You can just head home with your noodle-stained shirt." All right, I'll change," I said, hesitating as I clutched the clothes. Then I asked, "Aren't you going to step out?" "Why would I step out?" she replied. "Because I'm changing," I said. "And?" she countered. I was speechless. Victoria sat down at the desk nearby, her large eyes blinking innocently as she looked at me. "Go ahead, change. We're an old married couple. What's there to be shy about? It's not like we haven't seen everything already." Grinding my teeth, I muttered, "So this is how it's going to be, huh?" Without another word, I quickly walked over and locked the door. Victoria shot up from her seat, looking nervous. "What are you doing?" she asked. I took a step closer and said, "I want." Her cheeks flushed a deep shade of red as she stepped back. "Don't mess around. We're at the police station." "Exactly," I said, taking another step toward her. "What better place? Might even speed things up. Why are you blushing, Victoria? Come on, we're an old married couple. Everything that should have happened has already happened. What's there to be shy about?" She took another step back, her voice slightly shaky. "No, really, you don't know. Actually, from the time we got our marriage certificate until now, nothing's happened between us." Cornered, she leaned against the desk, her eyes closing as if resigning herself to fate. But in the next moment, she heard me say, "I'm done changing." She opened her eyes and let out a dissatisfied huff. "That's it?" I chuckled. "Well, if you put it that way, I wouldn't mind something actually happening right now." "Stop. Just stop," she said, shaking her head. "Totally unnecessary." I stepped closer again, but this time, as she closed her eyes, I gently embraced her. Her face rested against my chest. "Victoria," I said, "Ethan wasn't entirely wrong earlier. I know so little about what's between us. I don't even know how I ended up marrying you. I don't know how I lost my memory. And the strangest part is, why is it that I've only forgotten you?" Victoria leaned her head against my chest and murmured, "I wasn't lying to you. You really did lose your memory, and yes, you only forgot about me. I'm sorry, though. It's my fault you lost your memory." I stayed silent, feeling her body tremble slightly. She continued, "Where should I even start? Let's go back to the day at the bar when we were carrying out the arrest. We hadn't been married long, but I still had to be at that bar for a stakeout. It was the headquarters of a pyramid scheme. William was the leader of the scheme, and Ethan was his younger brother. Around that time, you started suspecting me of having an affair because I was always coming home after midnight. So you tailed me to the bar and just happened to walk in on me arresting Ethan. You misunderstood, thinking I was protecting him, and started beating him up. I tried to stop you because I didn't want you to get in trouble, but you thought I was shielding him, and became completely disappointed in me." She sighed before continuing, "But when William heard the commotion and ran over with a beer bottle to attack me, you instinctively stepped in and took the hit for me. You were knocked out cold. I was so worried about your injury that the suspects managed to escape in the chaos. That was when you suffered mild memory loss. I say mild because you only forgot about me. Victoria looked up at me with a mix of grievance and guilt. Maybe you just didn't want to remember me because I was the one who got you hurt. I stood there, speechless. I didn't remember any of this, but the way she told the story, it felt like it had been steeped in melodrama. I couldn't help but ask, "Then how did we even get married? Did I force you into it?" She paused for a moment and then laughed lightly. "The first time we met was also at a bar. You were drunk out of your mind and went outside to smash your friend's Range Rover, yelling about how he shouldn't even think about driving drunk. I happened to step out to check what was going on, and you grabbed my hand and kept calling me your wife. Then you passed out and I had to help you inside." With a look of indignation, she added, "Then your friend came out, saw me holding you, handed me a wad of cash, and told me to take good care of you for the night before disappearing. I'm still debating whether I should have arrested him." She sighed deeply. I'd never been in such a situation before. I was so distracted that I handed my stakeout assignment over to Wendy and took you to a hotel to rest. But there was only one room left. The next morning, do you know what you said to me? Even though it was your nosebleed that ruined the bed. You woke up claiming you'd ruined my innocence and insisted on taking responsibility. You told me not to worry about anything, that your whole life would be dedicated to making me happy. You wouldn't take no for an answer, and boom, I went from being single to married just like that. I stood there in stunned silence, only one thought running through my mind. What the hell? Was I really that much of an idiot? But then again, getting drunk and accidentally landing myself a wife, yeah, that's one way to look at it. Alcohol really does have a way of making things happen. On a clear and breezy day, I once again found myself bringing a lunchbox to Victoria at the police station. Of course, this time it wasn't instant noodles, it was takeout I had ordered specifically. The young receptionist told me Victoria was still outside handling a case. Familiarity comes with time, so this time I went straight to Victoria's office. But as soon as I opened the door, I froze. There was another man. And that man, oh, to my disbelief, was casually pinching Victoria's cheek in an affectionate manner. Honestly, I was speechless. How many men does Victoria have hidden in this precinct? The man, hearing the sound of the door opening, turned to look at me. He asked, "And you are?" I replied, "Buddy, if you're the current one, I might just be the ex." The man was momentarily at a loss for words. Victoria quickly jogged over, twisted my arm, and said to him, "This is my husband." She smoothly wrapped her arm around mine and, standing on her tiptoes, leaned close to my ear to whisper, "Call him brother. Are you trying to make yourself my little uncle?" Her warm breath brushed against my neck. "Little uncle?" I looked up at the man, utterly puzzled. Victoria explained, "Oh, I forgot to mention he's my dad." I was dumbstruck. The man chuckled, stood up, and said, "You must be sincere." He walked toward me and continued, "Sorry, I was a bit distracted earlier. What did you say?" I quickly replied, "Oh, nothing much. I was just asking how you've been doing, sir." Victoria interjected, "He," but I swiftly clamped a hand over her mouth, signaling her to keep quiet with a look. Victoria's eyes sparkled with mischief as she stared at me, making me feel increasingly uneasy. I said, "Sir, I must say you look incredibly young." Victor laughed heartily. "You're quite the smooth talker, young man. I'm not here for anything serious today, just wanted to check on how you two are doing. Victoria told me about your sudden wedding, and I couldn't make it back from abroad in time. I felt bad about it ever since." Patting me on the shoulder, he added, "Sincere, I know you're a good man. I hope you'll take good care of Victoria. If not," he paused dramatically before continuing, "well, let's just say you might not stand a chance against her. She won the National Martial Arts Championship when she was just 16. But if she ever bullies you, you let me know." I was speechless. Victor then pulled a box out of his bag. Inside was a bracelet of exquisite craftsmanship. He took Victoria's hand and said, "Victoria, this belonged to your mother. Now that you're married, I'm entrusting it to you." The cool touch of the bracelet on Victoria's wrist contrasted with the warmth spreading in my chest. I said, "Sir, rest assured, I'll take good care of Victoria." Victoria leaned over and teased, "You wouldn't dare bully me now, would you?" I nodded awkwardly. Victor beamed at the two of us. "Let's have lunch together," he suggested. "I have some things to take care of this afternoon, so I won't intrude on you two for too long." I held Victoria's hand as we left the precinct with Victor. Back at home, Victoria couldn't stop laughing at how nervous I had been in front of her dad. She teased. She didn't understand. Of course, I didn't mention who was too nervous to even walk through the door when it was time to meet my parents. After we left my parents' house, her earlier words came back to me. I asked, "You said we never really had anything happen between us. Why is that?" I pulled her close, her slender figure leaning against the passenger seat. "Why?" she murmured softly. I hesitated. "Was it because I have such strong self-control?" She looked at me intently and said, "I wasn't sure if you were with me just out of a sense of responsibility or if you truly cared about me. I didn't know until the day you got hurt for me. That's when I realized your feelings. But by then you had already forgotten about me." "I'm sorry," I said, gripping her hand tightly. "No, I should be the one apologizing for putting you through so much pain. That was my fault." "You've done nothing wrong," she said, her voice firm. "Meeting you is the greatest blessing of my life." Later, she rested her head against my shoulder and murmured, "Sincere, I'm so glad it's you. And I'm so glad it's you," I whispered back. 3 months after getting our marriage certificate, I threw Victoria the wedding she deserved. That night, after 180 glasses of wine, I was thoroughly drunk. My face was flushed red as I stumbled toward Victoria in our wedding suite. "Victoria," I declared, holding her tightly, "from now on you're my one and only tigress." Victoria rolled her eyes. After a night of wrestling with the tigress, the next morning Victoria said, "Sincere, your skills still need some work. I'm exhausted." Love, I thought to myself, is like a mountain you can't climb over.